Hello everyone and welcome to a brand new video in this series. I'm your host Zach from Theme Park Media, the place where we talk too much about coasters, and today I'm going to be ranking all the coasters at Busch Gardens Williamsburg. Today I'm going to be ranking all of their roller coasters ranging from their Zaire family coaster Grover's Alpine Express all the way to coasters as big as Apollo's Chariot, their B&M Hyper Coaster. Just please know that this is my opinion and I am basing it off of which coaster would I rather ride over the other, which one am I most looking forward to when I enter the park, and so you guys can kind of get an idea of what to expect for when you plan your visit. So with that all said, let's get into it. In my number 8 spot, I have Grover's Alpine Express. Like I said, this is their family coaster of the park, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with it. It's just not the coaster that I'm most looking forward to when I enter Busch Gardens. I believe I only rode this coaster once, and that was when I was 4, so I guess I don't have a great feel for the ride because I rode it when I was younger, but I remember, it being a fun family coaster. If you're an adult watching this and you're looking for a coaster to bring your kid on, I absolutely recommend Grover's Alpine Express. It's a great family coaster to get your kids into coasters, so that's why Grover's Alpine Express takes my number 8 spot. Coming in at number 7, I have Tempesto. Now, there's nothing wrong with Tempesto. It's the Skyrocket 2 model. It's a good ride, don't get me wrong. My home park is Six Flags New England, meaning that I am pretty close to Lake Compounce, which means that I have been on Phobia Fear Coaster, pretty much the same thing as Tempesto. The only thing is it does not have the comfort collar, which I do prefer Phobia because it does not have the comfort collar. Just Tempesto, I don't feel like it was a great fit for Busch Gardens. I feel like they just kind of added it because they had 3 Skyrocket 2 models to send to their parks, and they chose Busch Gardens. There's nothing wrong with it. Of course, it has 3 launches, so that's pretty cool. It has a slow-moving inline twist at the top, which is, really cool. But overall, this coaster just doesn't do it for me. When I rode Phobia, I rode it in the front because I was a front seat type of coaster guy, but now I prefer the back to coasters, so I have ridden Tempesto only in the back row, and I found it a little bit shaky. Not rough by any means. It's not rough at all. Don't say that it's rough. It's not. It's just a little shaky, a little uncomfortable going down that big drop that it has. But other than that, Tempesto's a pretty solid ride. I just don't think that it's one of the best coasters in the park. At my number 6 spot, I have Invader, the GCI family coaster of the park. Let me tell you, Invader is a great ride. I think it was a great fit. Would it have been better if it was larger? Of course it would. It wasn't really the GCI that many people were expecting to come to Busch Gardens. Invader is a great ride because it delivers in what it's supposed to. It gives a good thrill for people that are too short for Verbolten, and it has lots of bank turns, ejector, and floater airtime hills. Yes, I said ejector and floater. That's kind of a cool thing that not many coasters have. Invader is a great coaster. I think it was a great fit. I think the theming's kind of weird, the spelling's kind of weird, but honestly, I kind of like the spelling of how they said Invader because it's different than any other park. I know a lot of people don't agree with that, but I think it's kind of cool and unique, and that's why Invader's taking my number 6 spot. At my number 5 spot, I have Verbolten, their Zaire multi-launch coaster, and a matter of fact, I have ridden Verbolten more than any other coaster at Busch Gardens, and that is because I have attended their Christmas Town celebrations when Verbolten was the only coaster that was open, so that's kind of cool. I'm not really biased towards it in any way because my first roller coaster was the Big Bad Wolf and has since been replaced by Verbolten, so I'm kind of salty that they made that decision. I do think that the Wolf was better in my opinion, but that is just my opinion. I do think Verbolten, however, is a good ride. It is very well themed, which I think is one of the benefits to this coaster. It is themed to the Black Forest. Verbolten also features a drop track, which is pretty unique. I think that really adds to the coaster because if it just kept going and launched out of the building, I think that would be a short ride. So it's kind of nice that it stops you for a little bit. It makes the ride feel a little bit longer. Of course, the drop over the Ryan River is also really cool, especially because of the theme that you have in that little building. You then dive towards the Ryan and then take the same course the Big Bad Wolf took all the way back up to the station. That pretty much concludes your rides. But anyway, Verbolten is overall a great ride. I definitely recommend you take a ride on it. And yes, so that is my number 5 spot. In my number 4 spot, I have the Loch Ness Monster. Now, this is a pretty unique ride because it is the only coaster in the world to feature interlocking loops. I think that the interlocking loops really adds to the feel for the coaster. I think it's overall a good ride. It's pretty smooth. I did only ride this coaster once, and that was more towards the front. I found it to be a little rough going around that first turn after the dip into the Ryan, but I think it was pretty cool. Overall, a great ride. I thought the theme was really cool, especially because it's in the Ireland section. The Loch Ness Monster, it's definitely a great ride. The Loch Ness Monster also has an area where you go into a tunnel and do a couple of helixes. I think that was great that they added that. It really adds to the feel for the coaster, and it's pretty interesting that this coaster has 2 lift hills. That is actually very interesting. I think something that really adds to this coaster is its historical significance. I don't think that if this coaster was made, say, a few years ago, that it would be as popular as it is, but I think for the coaster that it is and what it has done to the industry of coasters, I think that is overall a great ride. It has aged very well, and I definitely recommend you taking a ride on it next time you go to Busch Gardens. Now comes my top 3. I know that some of you are going to disagree with this. Like I said, this is my opinion, and this is what coaster I would rather ride when I visit Busch Gardens. So coming in at number 3, I have Griffon, their B&M dive coaster. I do agree with some enthusiasts when they say that dive coasters are one-trick ponies. It really has the drop, and that's really it. But then again, that drop is very good. It has 2 awesome drops. I do prefer the second drop off the mid-course to the first drop, which sounds kind of weird because the first drop is steeper and bigger, but I do prefer the smaller drop because you are carrying a little bit of speed into it, and if you're in the back row, then you absolutely get flung out of your seat. A little story about this is when I first visited Busch Gardens Williamsburg for the first time is when I was 4. That's when I rode my first coaster, and I remember looking at Griffon and saying, I want to do that, I want to do that, I want to do that, and of course I was too short because I was 4 years old, and ever since then I've been really looking forward to do Griffon as I got older, and I just was able to ride it. I don't think it was as good as I was hoping, but it definitely delivered a good ride. I definitely recommend back row right hand side. I think that is the best seat on this coaster, and also try to get some wiggle room because it's really fun when you get flung over that drop. But with that all said, let's move into our number 2 spot. Number 2 on my list is Apollo's Chariot, and let me tell you guys, I have not been more let down with the coaster than Apollo's Chariot. I mean to say that in the most positive way possible. Before I rode Apollo's Chariot, everyone compared it to Nitro, and I've ridden Nitro tons and tons of times, so I was expecting a ride like Nitro. However, I do not think Apollo was anywhere close to Nitro. I believe Nitro was a lot better. I believe there are 8 airtime hills on Apollo's Chariot, and I believe I got airtime twice, and that was a little bit on the first airtime hill and then coming off the mid-course. I did ride this coaster in the back row because I tend to go and sit in the back row when it comes to B&M hypercoasters. That's just where I prefer most coasters, in the back row. So I rode it and I was very underwhelmed. I remember hitting that brake run and just being like, that's it? Is that really what everyone says, and is that really what everyone's comparing to Nitro? And then so the next day I did ride it again, but in the front row so I can get a different feel, and I did like it a lot more. For a while this was actually behind Griffon, and Griffon was the number 2 coaster in the park, but since Apollo has given a little bit more airtime in the front, I definitely recommend this coaster in the front. The back, you're really going to get 2 airtime moments. In the front, you're going to get maybe 4 or 5, which still, it's not amazing. I do prefer Nitro, but that's okay, because moving into our number 1 spot, we have Alpengeist. So Apollo's Chariot did not meet my expectations, but man, did Alpengeist surpass my expectations. I loved this ride. I totally understand that it is rough in areas, but I'm looking past that and just looking at the overall ride, the overall layout, the theme, everything about it. I love it. I think it's awesome. I'm a snowboarder, so I can relate to the theme as a runaway ski lift, but it's more than just the theme. Let's just talk about the layout for a quick second. I think the drop on this is so unique. It's kind of like an S. It kind of just keeps curving all the way around, unlike most B&M inverts, which just kind of have a curved drop. This one like keeps curving and curving and curving. And then you go into an Immelman, which is a little different for B&M, something kind of like Banshee. And then you go into a massive vertical loop, and then you hit the Cobra roll. This is unfortunately the worst part of the ride. You just get your head banged so bad. But in this case, I'm going to look past that. I think the Cobra roll is good. Going down the Cobra roll is much smoother than going up the Cobra roll, but still, it's very intense, and I do like an intense ride. You then travel into the mid-course. The mid-course, when I went, really slowed you down, which is unfortunate, and I'm sure in the summer it'll be running a little bit faster. Then go into a 0G roll, into a corkscrew, and then to a little helix, and the ride's over. In my opinion, it was kind of short. I was expecting a little bit more from it. I did watch lots of POVs for this ride, so I did know what to expect. First ride I got on this was in the absolute back row, right-hand side. It was okay. I didn't think it was the greatest. I still would have put it number 1 in the park. It just seemed a little bit more sluggish than when I rode it in the second row. The only reason I rode it in the second row was because the front row line was absolutely so long, and I was not about to wait in that. But luckily, I had the ride again access, so I got 2 rides on Alpengeist in the second row. So that was kind of cool. I do prefer it more towards the front. I'm sure the front would have been better than the second row, so I recommend moving more towards the front of the coaster. I feel like that's where you feel the most speed. Now, this might sound totally strange, but I don't really feel the trims as much in the front as I did in the back. That's probably just, I don't know, maybe it was just the ride that I was on, but for both times I rode it in the front, I did not feel the trims as much as the back, which is just kind of something cool to add. I love the intensity on this ride. I think it absolutely delivers such a fantastic ride, and I'm looking at the potential that it has also. If this thing got a retracking and it was butter smooth, I absolutely think that it would be one of the best B&M inverts out there. It is such an intense, fast, and unique ride. Now some of you might be saying, Zach, really? Alpengeist over Apollo's Chariot or even Griffin? Because I know a lot of people rank Alpengeist number 3, then Griffin, then Apollo's Chariot, but this is just the ride that I would most want to ride when I enter Busch Gardens. Next time I enter Busch Gardens, this is the ride that I'm going to be going to first. I'm definitely going to try sitting in the front row just to see if there's a difference. And like I said, Apollo's Chariot and Griffin, they have their moments, but really Alpengeist is a back-to-back, fast-paced ride. I love it. So I really hope that you guys enjoyed this Busch Gardens roller coaster ranking. Be sure to subscribe down below and comment to what parks you think I should do more coaster rankings to. Thank you for watching my first ever ranking video. I'm your host Zach from Theme Park Media signing off, and peace out.
Oh.